We're live on Facebook. All
All
right.
right. Welcome to the Muay Thai Guys podcast, episode 107, Q&A. So we're interacting everyone that's live right now. If you're listening on iTunes, you may have missed it. You may have been a part of it. You may be getting a shout out, so you're excited to listen to it again. We don't know. I guess we'll find out when you're listening in on the actual iTunes. So welcome. We're going to be taking all questions, no limitations, anything and everything.
No
And
limits.
no limits. We'll start with just a number of pre-submitted questions that we've had in the past. And I just had a Q&A on my Instagram that I was going through. So we'll just go through little quick tips, and that's what we'll make this podcast. It'll be fun, interactive with everyone else, because we kind of ignored everyone on the last on the last podcast that we did. We had a number of questions throughout there as well.
Yeah, I'm pumped up about it. I mean, I always feel bad because there's always questions that we end up missing, but that's why we do these specific episodes to kind of catch up with some of the things that we missed out on.
This is so the first one is something that you get a lot. I feel like anytime that I'm looking at your Q&As or the type of audience that you have is you get asked all the time, how old is too old to fight?
In my opinion, age is just a number. I mean, obviously, the older you get, the more health risk there is that goes along with fighting. But I know guys in their 50s, some even in their 60s, like Coach Jeff, who is still fighting. And so it's all it's like a societal thing, telling people that they can't fight after a certain age. But you know what's funny is most of the time people who ask me those questions are like in their 20s or in their 30s. And I just want to fucking smack them and be like, what the hell are you talking about, man? And whether you it's too old to fight or not, you're never too old to train, and you can get some good training in while you're doing it. At least that's my opinion.
Joe Rogan just had his most recent MMA show guest. I think it's a really good one to listen to. I just want to make sure I get Justin Wren, he has that like foundation. It's Fight for the Forgotten, where they build wells for the pygmies in the Congo. And from what I heard, he started doing professional MMA. I mean, he's been doing jiu-jitsu his entire life, but more of like, traditional martial arts. But he didn't fight until he was 31, having an official, combat sport type of fight. So his first MMA fight was when he was 31, and now he's 34, looking to fight Gegard Mousasi for the Bellator title. So only 3 years, started when he was 31. Another great example would be the private I'll be releasing on my Patreon is with Kathy, Mrs. Kathy Mack from Ireland. She is a world champion kickboxer, and now at 40 years old, she's making her professional boxing debut, and her goal is to get the Irish national title within her first 4 fights, and then start going abroad in Europe to fight for the English title, to fight for the European titles, and then perhaps move on from there. And from personal experience, I have never felt a lady, first of all, that weight hit that hard. And then for her to be at the age of 40, to be hitting with such dynamite in her hands, I think it's possible.
The thing is too, it's all relative. So it's all dependent on the individual and how well they take care of themselves and their body as well. And so it's just a matter of yeah, the individual, because some people at 40 are old and decrepit, and some people at 40 are fucking
That
savages.
is
So
so true. Yeah, I mean, that's huge.
and it's also a mindset thing. So like some of my I guess you could call them high school friends or some people, because been in New York for a little bit now, and we're in our 30s now when I meet up with some of my friends, and they're already talking about how they're getting old and how they're feeling old and all this kind of stuff. And like, yeah, my body's changed since I'm 31 now, but when it comes down to it, it's like it's all what you put into it, and that's what you get out of it. Because otherwise, it's so easy to live a sedentary lifestyle where your body just kind of forms into the couch, and doesn't really form into any type of athletic movement. And so, as long as you're staying active, that will help your longevity. If you decide you want to fight later on, but I think it's just a matter of treating your body and treating your mind right, and then age. It's just a number, man.
Yeah, and I think a bit of hope also is that a lot of these tournaments that are coming up for Muay Thai, they've had this for boxing for quite some time now, but now where they call it the whatever platinum gloves or whatever it may be instead of the golden gloves, now they've added on to the Muay Thai tournaments the veteran bracket, which is I believe over 50 years old. So for competitors over 50, there's a certain cutoff for it. Don't quote me on that number, but for those that are starting a bit late in their career, I mean, that's a huge opportunity. You wear shin guards, you put on headgear. I actually trained at Thornton's wife. She's, a black belt in karate, but definitely no like full contact experience in that sense. And she fought when she was in her mid 40s. So, it's possible, and there's more and more opportunities to do it now.
Boom. So I feel like we answered that pretty well. So let's go to a live question that we got from Al, and he's asking, "There's no Muay Thai gym around him. How do you suggest he trains?"
Well, we also had a pre-submitted question asking about solo training on your own. I would say that there's a number of things that you can do. Man, being with a partner, there's nothing that can replace it. Obviously, there's a number of guides and programs that we have released because of how many people contact us with this question. But I would say number one, especially early on, just so you can feel it out with another body, is to find someone in your area, in your region, that may have the same passion for this. I mean, that's how MMA kind of started, was a lot of guys kind of finding whoever they can and learning jiu-jitsu online through YouTube, through, the Gracie Academy. So, I mean, now there's almost no excuse. You can travel to anywhere. It's actually kind of surprising that you don't have some in your area. I mean, there's even fitness gyms that a lot of the time have pretty legitimate boxing trainers. If you can't find Muay Thai, I would start with some type of other combat sport. Boxing will always sharpen up your hands until the moment that perhaps a Muay Thai or kickboxing gym opens up nearby. Pretty much take whatever you can in your control. Maybe start boxing. And if you can, most boxing gyms, it's kind of an open gym. So you can go in and practice your Muay Thai there as well. Sean has the heavy bag blueprint, which is how many hours of content on there?
It's too much. It's like 10 plus hours.
But it's a full program. So he goes from the basics of like a 20-minute 101, how to jab, how to throw a cross, the basics of your foundation, your stance, and then going into combinations, doing different rounds, like full on workouts up to like how many? It was a 12-week program.
Yeah, 12-week program. I think there was 30 workouts, 100 combos, 30 drills. So that's the thing too, is that I know when I first started training Muay Thai, the online resources were limited, but now as the internet has progressively grown and people like the Muay Thai guys have shown up, there's more and more content out there where you can do your own training. And the heavy bag, in my opinion, is like your best training partner that you could have because it's super reliable. You can beat the shit out of it. It'll always show up and you don't have to call it to make sure that's going to be there on time. You always have the heavy bag. And so always being able to do that and focus on your technique while also shadow boxing, doing some road work and running, and then also implementing some studying with like Lawrence Kenshin's breakdowns and more watching fights and that kind of stuff. There's always, like you said, if you can get a training partner and a trainer, like obviously that is what you should be striving for. But if you can't for whatever reason, or if more of your time is dedicated to solo training, there's plenty that you can be doing. And there's whole communities that help you hold each other accountable, like Knock Muay Nation. And there's things that you can do by yourself that you just couldn't do before. And with the plethora of knowledge that's on the internet right now, there should be nothing holding you back, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea that I got for my Patreon is that there's people with all types of shapes, sizes, levels, and that's kind of what I wanted to bring is that I've been able to train with a lot of female fighters of all shapes and, an amateur, a professional, someone that's just doing it for fitness, like Grandma Betsy. And then we have a professional fighter that I was just working with as well. Then the same thing when it comes to the guys. I had your grandpa, your uncle, your brother, the little kids, whoever it may be. So for me to be able to bring every type of person, the every type of person and what type of goals they have. So no matter what you really are looking for me to bring that together in like inside one place. Um, Patreon.com/limitless project.
By the way.
Soft pitch. And his original question was who's going to beat up Conor McGregor next? Now, all right, so we didn't really cover this too much. I know we said something really quick last time about the fight. What did you think of the whole spectacle, I guess?
I think people are blowing it way out of proportion, in my opinion, because like things like that have happened in all combat sports. Like if you like people like I've seen a lot of Muay Thai people specifically be like that would never happen in Muay Thai. Well, guess what? It happened like 10 times worse with like Saxon and shit back in the day, like it happens in every sport where there's these rivalries that just get so heated that shit gets taken after the fight, and that's just part of the game. I mean, obviously martial arts is about respect and being humble and all that kind of shit. And we want to teach that. But once you get all this money involved in the sport, like there's going to be some type of showmanship that goes along with it as well. And so, as much as people like complain about it, if Khabib and McGregor fought again, they're going to pay to watch them fight because of all the drama and shit that's already involved around them. And so, I look at it as like a bird's eye view of like try to take yourself out of the perspective of a like a fan and look at it in like a bigger picture of like what it all revolves around, and then you'll see it's just all a business thing. But I mean, obviously there's some animosity between them, which is legit, but they're utilizing that to drive more sales to get more people to watch. And although they're some people think that they're like putting a black eye on the sport, which is a good analogy, I feel like in this sense. But it's just it's part of the fight game. Like as much as martial arts is respect, it's also fighting, and so shit's gonna happen. And so that's my opinion on it. What about you?
I kind of expressed it in the last episode, just talking about, taking into account where these people came from, how they rose from nothing to the top, and that a lot of people won't be able to just put themselves, in their shoes. I think I agree with the fact that what you're talking about with the money. I think a lot of things change that. I don't think either one of these fighters came up thinking like this is what's going to happen. It just escalates, especially when you bring something very personal into it, like religion, like family, and that's what you can just expect. I come from kind of a different culture. Growing up in Europe, where we are not protected, let's say, in schools from something that's physical, while we're super safe just saying things verbally, meaning like both are kind of taken into account. Like it seems like in America, for some reason, any kind of like a verbal altercation is okay, and you can say whatever you want and you can be extremely disrespectful, and it's people bring up freedom of speech, and then they feel safe, they feel really comfortable saying whatever they want. But then someone acts out in a physical fashion and we condemn them and we damn them, which I don't know, to me at least, it's foreign. I posted that video of that little girl. I don't know if you saw it, talking about whatever, Tony hitting her and how she has a black eye and she has to sit in. Like she can't hit him back. The
Mm-hmm.
teacher said, like, you're not allowed to hit someone back that hit you. And then she's like, she's this little girl. She's like, we're both going to sit on the rainy day on Friday, and Tony going to have a black eye too. This tiny little girl talking about it. It's man, it brought humor to a situation that's I think serious in many places. I think people need to learn respect when it comes to the way they handle themselves. And then in this situation, I don't think it even applies to this situation. That's me talking about like population in general. In this situation, you have two entertainers trying to sell a fight, so we shouldn't really connect the two.
Yeah, I agree. And then yeah, just MMA is also a different sport, and like the UFC is a big money making machine. So everything that they're doing has a purpose behind it, and I think you just have to keep things in perspective. And as much as that's the crazy thing about it, I'm going a little off tangent right now, but like when I grew up, there was no Facebook and internet essentially. And so when you had an opinion about something, you weren't able to just express it to the world. Now everyone has an
Yeah.
opinion, whether they actually train and fight or if they're just sitting behind a computer screen and typing in bullshit. So it's hard. Like I liked your post because if you haven't been in a fight in that kind of situation before, then who are you to judge them for living all out? And like people who hate on McGregor for tapping out and shit and doing all this, like, do you have any idea how painful and like uncomfortable that choke is? And like, you have any idea like the pressure of the situation, the magnitude of the situation, and like, I don't know, it just drives me crazy. Oh, I wouldn't have tapped, kind of shit. Like, yeah, you would have. You don't fucking
Well,
know.
Connor
Shut
is
the
also
fuck
the
up.
only person to win a round against him. So think about that. He's done that to 26 other people.
Yeah, I know. It's just it blows my mind, but everyone's entitled to their own opinion nowadays, and so you'll hear a lot of opinions, especially on Facebook and whatnot. So, but
Yeah.
it's always interesting to see other people's perspectives on things because it helps you figure out your perspective by taking other people's opinions and kind of molding your own. But I think a lot of people are a little misguided in it all. But that's just my opinion. So what the fuck do I know, right?
That too. Next question from Joshua Luke. Where is the best country to travel to in order to pursue a career in fighting? And this one is kind of a loaded question in a way because it depends on
The sport.
what type of sport, yes, you're looking for. I mean, if it comes to Muay Thai, I that's a really tough one because you're either going to be in Thailand and you'll have the most opportunity, you'll get the purest form of it, but you'll get the least out of it. Meaning, like if you're pursuing a career, if you're looking at it financially, you're not going to get much out of it. Maybe you do turn that eventually into a career in the West, which would probably be the best way to do it, is to get here, you gain your experience, you learn it in its purest form. But then again, you have to adapt it to the Western rule set, how they judge it there. And then you can get on the bigger shows to fight there. If it comes to kickboxing, I would say somewhere like Holland or Brazil. And then for MMA and I think it's a hard one to discredit is that the U.S. is the number one spot for MMA. I think there's just no better base than American wrestling, unless you're from like Dagestan. That might be, the one and only exception. What would you input into that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Thailand is the best place to at least build your experience and get the most training and build up your skills and record. So this way, if you want to transition to a bigger promotion and get more money, that's definitely a good way to go about that. Yeah, for MMA, I mean America. I mean, if you look at all the champions, they're all mainly either American or Brazilian. So that must say something about those two countries doing the right type of training. And so it's just a matter of it's not so much country as it is gym and atmosphere that you're training at because I mean, I know a lot of gyms in Thailand, like you could train in Thailand and still not make it very far because you're at a gym that isn't putting you as a priority or has the top training. But then you could also go to Thailand and become a fucking beast. The same goes with the US. I mean, there's so many gyms, there's so many different trainers and coaches that it really is like a crapshoot in what you get handed and where you're living and that kind of stuff. But if you were to get up and move, I would say, yeah, US, go to one of the top gyms that you see on fucking UFC. I mean, like that's the best way to become successful is to mimic success. So if you want to be like TJ Dillashaw, go train with Dwayne Ludwig. If you want to be like Conor McGregor, go to Ireland. Try to get in Kavanaugh's gym. You know, if you want to be Pechnarung, go to fucking where is he training out of anyway? Do you know?
I believe it's called Kiat Mu 9.
Kiep Munan. That's right. Yeah, go there because you'll be fucking tested. That's for fucking sure. And so, yeah, that's my opinion on that. Um, we'll move to David Ma, who is asking about Jeet Kune Do. Would we learn it, and is it integral for MMA? Um, personally, I don't know too much about Jeet Kune Do, besides some of the stuff I've read from Bruce Lee. I know that they preach the opposite stance, so your strong side is leading forward, and I'm down with that. I mean, I fight southpaw often, and other than that, I I don't really have much of a base of knowledge on Jeet Kune Do to really answer that question. I just know that a lot of the philosophy I could get down with in regards to the fighting style. I don't know. I don't know enough. What about you, Paul?
Justin Wren, the one I just talked about, he actually got interested in MMA because of Jeet Kune Do. And I just actually, it's funny that this came up today because I just listened to that podcast and then I saw a highlight of like a Jeet Kune Do style karate that was translated into MMA, and they had a highlight video of karate fighters in the UFC. Is it something that's critical for MMA? I wouldn't say so. Um, Now, learning it, could it help you? I think so, in the sense that, but I think it's again one of those like short term gains until people figure it out. I think a lot of these karate guys are really big strides right now because they're kind of awkward, meaning the timing is different, the range is different. They're kind of, some of them are flowing really good boxing with that point sparring, so they're kind of blitzing in, then they're out, and it comes in so fast. They just know how to tag you up and then get out. And then if they also have boxing counters and things like that, then man, it makes them really dangerous. And guys aren't used to the timing, they're not used to the distancing. But I think after time, guys are going to adapt to that just as they adapted to jiu-jitsu. You don't see as many, wild submissions happening. I honestly, like, things are getting mellowed out. I think no matter what style you have, until you have someone that's like extremely complete, and then it's just all based on athleticism and actual like overall skill and everything.
I would have to agree. Yeah, I think the best base obviously is like wrestling with Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and some good Western boxing from what I can understand. And the karate people who are successful, they're really fucking good at karate. Like they've like done it their entire lives. This karate is not something that I feel like you can pick up like halfway through a career and implement
Yeah.
effectively, where Muay Thai and boxing and jiu-jitsu and wrestling are things that they're types of martial arts that anybody can learn and anybody can get proficient at in a relatively short amount of time if they decided to do so. And so as long as you're able to like think about it that way, is Jeet Kune Do worth learning in exchange for, let's say, Muay Thai? Uh, I don't know. It depends on your goals and what you want to accomplish, and if you want to be like a well-rounded martial artist and learn more about Bruce Lee's philosophy in martial art, then yeah, like that's what you should do. If you want to be like a professional fighter, um, I'm not sure if that's the best use of your time, but that's just my opinion. And so it's all dependent on how much work and effort and time studying you put into the martial art and training it. So
Yeah. Next one is by Shane Willis, a high level fighter at the gym, said that low calf kicks we're seeing in MMA won't work in Muay Thai because of the stance and the lead foot being turned out. He says that they become too easy to check. Is he right? Is he right, Sean?
um, in a way, I think those kicks still fucking work. It's just a matter of timing them and making sure that when you do kick them, that you're getting your opponent to either try to sit down on punches So this way they're planted and they can't check it and they have all their weight on it. So it's a little bit easier to kick it without them worrying about checking it. But yeah, I mean that kick works. I mean, it's just a matter of yeah, timing and technique and making sure that you get your opponent to do the right things before you throw it. I mean, you can't just like you can't throw a body kick willy nilly and just hope that it's going to land. You can't throw a calf kick half ass. You have to have setups. You have to have timing. Just like with any kick, just like people thought the spinning wheel kick wouldn't work in MMA, but now it works. You know, and it's just a matter. And will it work in Muay Thai? It sometimes works in Muay Thai. It's like it everything has its time and place, and I think as long as you're able to kind of set it up, then I don't see why any reason it wouldn't work in Muay Thai.
Yeah, my last opponent, the when I was studying him, his fight prior, he actually got a knockdown. Like he was knocked down because his opponent Charles Rodriguez that fought him calf kicked him, and it like as he was trying to get up, you can tell that something in his calf just got torn up. He finished the entire fight in all 3 rounds, and then he actually started winning. But you can see it was bothering him the entire fight, and it was from like the first or second little calf kick that he ate. But then again, his stance is more of like he had a really wide stance, a lot tougher to check kicks. I think against Thais is going to be really, really tough to land. And it is a lot easier to check it if you think about it. Like by the time you lift up your leg for like a kick on the higher part of your thigh, it takes more time. When it comes to that little kick to the calf, it doesn't take much. You just slightly lift up your knee, and then you're really blasting your shin. And the knockdown that I got in the fight is I timed the calf kick when I got the knockdown, so he was actually aiming for my calf.
Yeah, calf kicks work really well against boxers, people who tend to throw hands because their weight is just down on their legs, and so it doesn't allow them to come up to check a lot quicker. If you're fighting a Thai who's bouncing on their front leg and ready to teep you or switch kick you, like they'll be able to check that so easily. And so that's just a matter of your opponent and what you see available. And I don't think it's so much a matter of sport, whether it's Muay Thai or MMA or whatever. I think it's just a matter of who you're fighting and whether or not that's going to be open. Because I know guys in MMA who would probably eat that shit up and be able to use that as a takedown or be able to check it. But same with Muay Thai. I know people who would love you to try to calf kick them so they could just put their knee into your shin and make you think twice about ever doing that again. So it's all up to you, man. You give it a try, see if it works, and then you'll find out for yourself.
I mean, ultimately, that's that's the testament to it is putting it to work yourself. I mean, there's a lot of guys that I watch and things that I definitely won't do, but I see other guys making it work somehow. And there's no way if I repped it out for 100 hours, I still wouldn't get it the same way that they do naturally.
So
So,
moving on, we got Frederick Hansen, who's asking for beginners who want to train at home, specifically focusing on how to train technique. Do you have any advice, Paul?
we went over a lot of this, but just to add to it, since he was saying specifically on training technique, is every session that you go into, and this isn't just specific to training by yourself, something you should be doing when you're going into the gym as well is focusing on what you're doing that day. You know, plan it out, outline it for the week. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, what are we going to focus on? Study footage of yourself. So that's another thing, especially when you're by yourself, setting up a little camera tripod on your cell phone, or it may be, and then studying yourself. When I was back home and I was only getting, 30 minutes one-on-one with my trainer out of the 5 hours I'm training, a lot of the time I'm on the heavy bag, I'm filming myself, I'm watching it back, sometimes even in the same session, and then going back to fix some of the mistakes. You got to keep yourself honest. And I think that's one good way of doing it is to study video of yourself. And then exactly what we talked about before. That's another reason I'm getting myself involved in trying to do online training. So then I can have people send me footage of themselves and perhaps I can see more things that they can't see themselves, that maybe they're not critical of, that perhaps I am critical of, and I can be very critical of, especially technique, since I'm so technique focused. And I mean, it's something I definitely enjoy people pointing out in me is any kind of technical flaw so I can get better from it. How about yourself?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you just said. I mean, video yourself and you try to get input from other people, ideally people who are better than you. So this way they can give you some constructive criticism to move forward with. But when you're focusing on technique, I mean, I think it's really important. Like I said, use the heavy bag and shadow box like a motherfucker. And that's basically all you can do anyway. But when you do that, you really need to work on your visualization skills because obviously there's not actually an opponent in front of you, but you have to do your best at pretending there's one. So this way you can not just focus on your offensive technique, but also your defense, checking kicks, evasion, movement, head movement, and all that kind of stuff. If there was one thing I wish I started doing earlier on in my career was focusing on defense, even when I wasn't sparring or doing
Mm,
partner drills. If I was focusing on defense while I was doing the heavy bag and shadow boxing, it would become much more natural to me where I wouldn't have to think about it when I am sparring or doing some partner drills. So, yeah, that's my general tip moving forward if
that's
you
a
want to
really
train
good
by
one.
yourself.
Yeah. How long should you train for before having your first amateur fight?
That's all dependent too. I mean, like everyone's a different person, you know. I know you didn't train very long before you got your first fight. It took me about a little bit over a year maybe before I had my first amateur
So
fight.
if you're a trainer and you're looking at a student, let's say, what would you be
Okay.
looking for?
Consistency more than anything. Someone who's consistently at the gym and putting in the work and not flaking out like when clinching is happening or when sparring is happening. I've seen so many people at gyms who say they want to fight and then clinch class starts and like, oh, I got somewhere to be. It's like, fuck, no, you don't, man. What the hell are you talking about? You got somewhere to be? Yeah, your bed to avoid fucking clinch class and shit. And so as a trainer looking at someone who wants to fight, yeah, consistency and putting in the work that no one else is putting in and just going that little extra mile and not having to tell them to do that. Cause it's fighting is a sport you have to be able to motivate yourself. If you can't motivate yourself and push yourself to make it to certain classes and to put in the extra time and effort that's necessary to do it, then fighting might not be for you. So, as a trainer, I mean, you got to look for that person who already has that fire and that discipline and that motivation to put in the work. So, this way, you can kind of help them, help mold them into of the fighter that they need to be for their first amateur fight.
Yeah, as you were saying that, it made me really think about what kind of message we're portraying to them and how to get the most out of a student. Meaning, if you have someone that's really talented, perhaps you see them sparring and they have a lot of natural ability. We would have that a lot, especially in Hartford, because some of these guys they have rough upbringings. They come into the gym, they've probably been in a few fights, wherever it may be, and now they're doing real training, but they have some instincts, and just getting out of the way and attacking, while other people, you have to kind of teach them how to move out of the way of a punch and things like that. But if they're not dedicated and they have a lot of athletic ability, natural ability, I think not letting them fight until they reach what you were just talking about, reaching that consistency, showing up to class and being respectful of what the coach is telling you to do. I, I think it's a short-term solution to let that person go in and perhaps have have be in the limelight, win, because then they almost learn like, oh, I don't have to do all that shit everyone else does. I can get away with not doing it, and I'm still talented enough. But that only gets so far, so it's like looking too short-term. You're just okay. I'm super talented, and then you reach a certain point, and you reach someone that is talented, that also is regimented and disciplined and has been putting in the hours, and then it's a rude awakening.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy early on to have this natural talent to just ride until that one point it just doesn't last anymore because, like you said, people are the same talent and then they're putting in twice as hard work than you. So it's something that you need to be aware of earlier on, and that no one. like hard work, as cliche as the saying goes, like hard work is everything, and putting in the time and being disciplined. I mean, it's all the concepts are really simple, but it's not easy to implement with putting in the extra work and staying focused and intentional. But when it comes down to it, as long as you're putting in that, or so as a trainer perspective, as long as your student is putting in the work and they're showing that they want it, then I think it's all good. So going back to like the main question, how long should it take? It really depends. I think at least a year, most likely. Sometimes a little bit less than that, depending on the student's natural athletic ability. Maybe 6 months if if they have good like athletic background, if they came from like team sports and are already well conditioned, then it's just a matter of making sure they're staying disciplined and making sure that they're learning the proper technique and tactics to implement in a fight.
Yeah, I would say one thing I would look at, let's say all those things are in order, the basic things that we went over, is the fighter reacting well, meaning that would be the number one thing because you can look amazing on the pads, you can look great on the bag, you can look like a savage and have great technique. I had a lot of the Thai trainers here going up to me and my girlfriend and like, oh no, you definitely fight before, like you have good technique, and she's a bit athletic, but in the back of my head, I'm like, there's no fucking way, man, because there's she doesn't have any kind of reaction built into her yet. So when I look at fighters like that offensively they're really good, but when they get hit, they just don't have the same reaction where they're making the person miss and they're being calculated in their shots. They're kind of tunnel visioning and not able to take shots well. That's what would deter me and scare me a little bit more as a coach, make me more anxious because I don't want my students taking too much damage early on in the career when they really don't have to, and especially when they're not ready to. So, you really have to show that you know how to avoid things. So what you said, drilling the defense a lot earlier on, I think can make everyone feel more at ease. Plus, your mama will thank you too because she doesn't want to see you coming back home with black eyes.
All right, so moving on to Agnes. Agnes, super fan. Agnes, love you. What would be a good proportion of conditioning versus training for an average enthusiast? Thoughts?
This one, we can combine that with the next question as well from Kumar because he asks how much strength and conditioning should you be doing during Muay Thai training? Should you do it on a separate day? And I'm going to run daily, do skipping, shadow boxing, hit the heavy bag. How can I add strength and conditioning to the regimen? I think if you're doing it as a hobby, but you still want to challenge yourself, I always say this for people to be in good shape. I think you got to do at least like 4 days a week. So it's a majority, of your week. And I believe you can do conditioning on the same days that you're doing your martial arts training. And that's how you really build conditioning, is because it's over a long period of time. It's aerobic. Now, if you're doing something a little bit more intense, strength and conditioning, like, heavy lifting, power lifting, those things take a lot longer to recover. There's a reason why guys only do, their max deadlifts and, those like 3 to 5 rep range compound exercises like 2 times a week, because your body needs time to recover for something so intense. So there's 2 ways of doing this. I would say that if you're doing a regimen that has really heavy strength and conditioning, meaning you're doing plyometrics and you're doing heavy deadlift, squat, bench press, things like that, I would limit that to two times a week as a martial artist. Now, if you're doing it on a more like aerobic scale where, it's higher rep ranges and you're doing more running conditioning, I think you can do that every single day with your regular training. When I was training for this past fight, I was doing my 5 hours of training and I was doing about 45 minutes of strength training on top of it. So as long as one tip I would give you for martial arts is that you don't go to failure on your sets when you're doing your strength and conditioning, because that's where you get that excessive soreness, you get the DOMS, you get the muscle fatigue, and then you go into your martial art training and your hamstrings are tight, your glutes fucking hurt, getting out of the car hurts, you shouldn't be killing yourself in strength and conditioning and then get to your skill work and not be able to do your skill work properly.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that the best conditioning you can get is through the sport itself. And so if you're doing kickboxing, do kickboxing for your conditioning. If you're doing Muay Thai, do Muay Thai, MMA, MMA. But if you want to supplement it with some additional work, then I've become more and more of a fan of road work. Excuse me, because I think it's been really important to build that aerobic base because it will help you recover faster in between reps, in between sessions, and so you'll be able to train much longer and for longer periods of time. And so doing the running, we actually just got a question from Lewis about how many miles should you run per week. I want to say it's necessarily miles as much as it is time. I judge my runs based off time than I do miles. So for instance, I'll run for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour. I won't really keep track of how far I'm running unless I want to. But I find it's much better for me because like when you're running, typically you're not sprinting. You're not trying to like beat your fastest pace every single time. I mean, there's a time and place to do that, but most of the time, the run is just to keep your heart rate at a steady pace. So this way, it strengthens, and so when it strengthens like this, your heart's literally getting stronger and a little bit better at pumping the blood flow throughout your body. And once you're able to do that, then when you are training and doing Muay Thai, then it's able to recover between rounds a lot quicker because you're literally strengthening your heart. And
Yeah.
so the running is super important, running, biking, any type of road work. But when it comes to strength and conditioning, like Paul said, I'll just kind of harp on his point is that you don't want that to affect your skill training. So if you're doing this for aesthetics, then I mean, maybe it's a little bit different, but if you're doing it
Yeah.
to be like as best you can with your sport, whether it's Muay Thai or kickboxing or whatever, then you want to make sure you're not overdoing it in the weight room and that you're focusing more on plyometrics and that kind of stuff because that's going to help benefit you and get your body more used to the type of movements you're doing in Muay Thai. So yeah, grand bird's eye view perspective is that conditioning from your sport is number one. And then I would focus on like cardio, like aerobic cardio, maybe some sprints every now and then to work on your anaerobic threshold as well. And then strength and conditioning should be like the last thing. The more I fight and train, the more I realize that strength and conditioning is like a very small proportion of what I should be focusing on. Everything else should be sport related or cardio related. Cardio is what wins fights. Power, I mean, that's nice to have and it's sexy and shit, but it's just not like precision and timing and distancing. Those things, which are much more like intangible things, are the things that you need to get really good at if you want to be a good practitioner or a good fighter. Lifting weights, like that's not necessarily going to help you with your fighting. Like it'll help build muscle and help work on some muscle fibers and your recovery and stuff. But more often than not, you're just best off working on your sport and cardio. So I know I said it like 10 times, but I felt like it's worth repeating.
Yeah. And, since I'm going through a lot of physical rehab in the past year, I would say that if you have little nagging injuries or you have imbalances in your body, like you can tell like your hips aren't popping through as much and you have to work more on activating your glutes or whatever it may be. Those little exercises, like whether it's leaning your wrists, using that little TheraBand stick I was talking about before on one of the prior podcasts, rehab work, or the just those little things to keep your joints healthy. I think you can do those every single day, and I would say those are really important for longevity and just your health in the sport. Because I can tell you right now, those injuries are a motherfucker if you just kind of leave it alone. So I would look ahead into the future, and I sound like an old person, but remember, I'm only 26 and I'm talking about it right now.
No, I think that's really important though. Like it's man, hindsight, bro. Fucking hindsight. Like if I knew what I knew now when I was like first starting in sport in 21, 22, like I'd be a I'd be even more of a fucking savage right now, and I'd be like a healthier savage too. And I wouldn't have as much brain damage or injuries either, because I'd be fucking smarter about my approach to it all. So hopefully
Yeah,
people will take this advice because this is stuff that I would have fucking done if I knew about it earlier on. And yeah, let's move on. Speaking of which, let's move on to a question that I thought was interesting with Michael Dobbs. He was
it's a good
asking,
question.
what are some ways you guys have learned to control your pacing and find rhythm during sparring and fighting? So like one answer question or one answer to that question or one word answer to that question is just experience. Just keep fucking doing it and you keep fucking doing it and you get better and more. It becomes just more of a natural scenario that you find yourself in. And so you naturally become more relaxed and you're able to pace yourself and you understand your body and how your mind works and that kind of stuff. Other than that, it's, I think, especially during sparring, it's important to find sparring partners who are on the same page as you in regards to if you want to spar to test yourself and your conditioning and stuff, then your sparring partner needs to know that. If you're sparring to work on technique and to focus on your pacing and your rhythm and your timing, then your partner needs to know that kind of stuff. I mean, it helps to have the challenge of not knowing what your sparring partner is going to be trying to do, but it also helps, especially with the experience and learning technique and defense and movement, to kind of have the same idea of what you guys are going to be working on during your sparring session. And this will help translate in a fight. But generally speaking, the best answer is you just got to experience it. You just got to keep doing it because, like, it took me 20 some odd fights to figure out my rhythm and my timing. And so, and I still feel like I'm still figuring that shit out. And it's always a constant improvement and a constant discovery of trying to figure out what's my best rhythm, what's my best timing, how can I control my, because like my last fight, for example, like I felt like I paced myself too much. And but fortunately in the fifth round I was able to come out and win. But like before that, I felt like I was almost like too analytical, too worried about gassing myself out. Whereas if I were able to push the pace a little bit more, I probably would have pressured him more and maybe made him make more mistakes. But like I said, this is all just a hypothetical thing. But generally speaking, experience. That's my best answer.
I'd like to kind of expand on the part where you're talking about putting the pace on your opponent and doing that earlier. Like pacing yourself doesn't always mean not doing anything or doing it, meaning it's not just like, okay, on, off, on, off. It's also putting a pressure on your opponent, doing as little as possible. Where I've seen fights where guys, and I felt this myself too, where you do less, but it makes you really tired. Just kind of taking the damage. Let's say like you get rocked, your body has that adrenal response, like, oh, I got rocked. Okay, we are in danger, adrenaline response, and then you get a dump after that that you have to try and recover from, which is really difficult to do. And especially when you're just reacting and you feel the pressure, like you're putting that stress and anxiety on your body, it can really tire you out as well. So a lot of the times where I have a high output, where I set the pace on my opponent, even though I have a high output, I'm the one setting the pace. So almost like dictating the pace is more important than what pace you're going at, if that makes sense. So if you come out skillfully, you're breathing, and you set up your jab and your teep, and now they're thinking, do I go in? Do I go out? Is he going to teep me? They have to worry about things while you're just studying them as you're throwing jab, teep, jab, teep, jab, teep. You establish that rhythm, then whatever flows off of that is a lot easier. You don't have to use as much mental power. You don't have to use as much physical power and trying to explode because you see where the targets are.
I kind of want to go to we'll get to Jeff's question soon, but Joshua kind of asked a relatively similar question, so I figured we answer that. Is it a big transition going from 5 2-minute rounds with a 1 minute break to 5 3-minute rounds with a 2 minute break? He's having his first 5 3-minute round outside of Thailand and just wondering how you pace yourself differently to fighting different times. Yeah, it is a big difference. And that's something that also is just going to come with experience. But the best way you can do it is simulate it in training as best you can. And the more you can simulate in training with the pad work, with the sparring rounds, with all that kind of stuff, the more comfortable you'll feel about going in there. But the 2 minute break is wonderful. If you end up doing that, like
It kind
that
of
is
feels like too
great.
long sometimes,
I know
right?
I get anxious. I'm like, all right, I'm ready. Like I'm ready to go already. And I'm still like I still got another minute to wait before I'm able to start fighting this guy again. I'm like, no, he's catching his breath. Like, fuck that. I want to get up and get fighting. But
Yeah.
it is nice to have that because you're able to kind of reset and not just your body, but your mind too, and really strategize what you're gonna do moving forward. And yeah, the pacing is definitely different because 2 minutes is even though it's 1 minute shorter than 3 minutes, it's a big fucking difference, man. Like that whole extra minute, when you're doing pad rounds and you just got 1 minute left after the trainer just fucking killed you, you're like, holy shit, that minute seems like an eternity. And the same goes for in a fight. Like it's just a matter of training yourself during training to get used to what 3 minutes feels like and how you're able to push past some fatigue and discomfort. But like Paul was saying, the pace is what you dictate, and I think that's really important because whether you're trying to be a defensive fighter who is frustrating your opponent early on and then you're starting to put the pressure on in later rounds, that's one way to go about it. Or if you want to constantly have pressure throughout the entire fight, then you got to train for it. So it all comes back to training and being able to implement what you do in training in the fight.
Beautiful. So going back to the question from Jeff March. Hello, guys. I wish to go to Thailand next year, maybe for a few fights. Um, I've set one-to-one training with a guy named him, blah, 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 blah. I hear after your first fight, you become a pro. Is this true? And is this a good route to go down, or are there downsides to this? This is a really weird topic of discussion because there's no official rules behind whether you're a professional or amateur fighter. From what I've heard is that some sanctioning bodies like will look at this, but honestly, personally, I have never experienced that myself. I fought 3 times in Thailand as an amateur coming back, and I don't think there's anyone that I've ever fought that fought in like has fought in Thailand was considered a pro. Like as an amateur, most of the guys I fought have fought in Thailand. Most of the guys I know that are amateur at a high level have fought in Thailand as well. So I think, and I know some guys on big shows. So that's the only one I would say to be careful of. I know guys that have fought, like Lumpini Stadium, or they fought on MX Max Muay Thai on like the actual televised show, and they're fighting amateur back home. I would say after like a televised show where you're fighting at a pro level, at a very, very high level with that experience, yeah, I would say that's pro. But if you're fighting at these little stadiums, the local stadiums, I definitely wouldn't consider it. So America is the only one that has this distinction. Like a lot of people are talking about this, and Americans are like confused. Is it really? Yeah, like guys in Europe, it's like one combined record. There's a transition between like CBA class, I guess, but for the most part, these guys are that's just their fight record. Like Petrosian with 100 fights, they're not all, like at this high of a pro level.
Yeah, I think that's important to differentiate because like if you're fighting at like a local stadium on an island or you're fighting just like in the backyard of an Isan house, then like those fights aren't necessarily pro level. And like that's the thing, like sometimes you don't even fight pro level on some of the bigger shows, but if you are fighting on a bigger show like Max Muay Thai or Super Champ or whatever the fuck they call it now, then yeah, that's kind of like that's a professional fight because it's a professional venue, it's professional production, you're getting professional pay, even though it's still shitty pay. And so as long as you're, because the thing is like when you fight in Thailand, you get paid, and so even if it's 500 baht or 1,000 baht, like you still get paid because that's just the nature of the beast. And so people take that as like, oh, you got paid, you're a pro now. And it drives me crazy when people have their first like couple fights in Thailand. They're like, yeah, I'm a pro fighter now. It's like, no, you're not, motherfucker. Like that's just not how it works. I mean, everybody can say, yeah, I won my first pro fight in Thailand. It's not a pro fight, bitch. Like, stop getting ahead of yourself. Like, slowly roll. That's not a pro fight. You got to put in the work. And usually, if you're gonna fight like a real pro fight, your first couple fights, you're gonna get your ass kicked. Just plain and simple. So I
Were
think,
your first three amateur fights actually, and like your first ever fights were in Thailand, correct?
yeah, my first three fights were in Thailand. They were not pro level. No way. And so I wasn't gonna have those three fights and be like, yeah, I'm turning pro now. Are you fucking kidding me? I would have died. Like I would have got murdered by whoever I fought in the pro rankings, and it just would not have been a good transition. And so, yeah, I think it is weird how the U.S. kind of goes about it, but it should be interesting to see how the evolution of that continues to evolve and see what comes from it.
From what I've seen, they're trying to start adding professionals to the tournaments and letting them go in the open divisions. So, like if you're an amateur, you might face pros, but that's how it is everywhere else around the world.
Yeah, I remember there was a huge thing at one of the tournaments where people were complaining about. I think it was like Tum Sit Yotong, who was
That's the one
in,
I was at. Yeah.
and like that's just what like they do. Like pro fighters fight in all the divisions and they try to win. And like you see Yatsen Klein and Artem Levin and stuff fighting with all this gear on and in these divisions that you wouldn't expect them to, but that's just how they gain experience and shit. And so, yeah, I think it's just a philosophical standout or like standpoint that most people have with like whether you're a pro and where you should be fighting and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. There's so much gray area in it. It's hard to have like a concrete opinion on it.
Yeah, I think just what I said in the beginning, this the best way of looking at it. I mean, do you want to take the risk and then say, well, Paul told me this? But honestly, I haven't seen any examples of like where you fight at these small local stadiums, then you go back home and all of a sudden people are saying you're not allowed to because the whole population is in the same boat as you. Like they've fought here. And as Sean said, his first like three fights as an amateur were there, and then he's had some wins and losses as an amateur after those fights. So, I mean, I took the same route. I had three fights in Thailand, but they were local stadiums. They definitely weren't professional level fights. But when I had my first professional fight, it was in Thailand, and it definitely was a professional level fight. I fought someone with 40 professional fights. That was also a IFMA gold medalist in the Pan Americans. And that was on a big show on Super Muay Thai. So, like, that's how I kind of delineated the two. The next question that we had is one that we already answered by Gohan. I have no Muay Thai gyms around me. How do I keep training by myself and actually be productive? Let them know, Sean.
Heavy bag, shadow box, study, fights, boom. We went over a lot of it earlier in the podcast, so we don't want to sound too redundant going over it again. So if you want to really know about our opinion, just rewind this once we're done and check that out. But yeah, basically heavy bag, cardio, shadow boxing, boom.
A lot of planning, a lot of yeah, the outlining part. I mean, we go over this. We set in a podcast prior how if you have a goal for the day, you're going to strive to achieve the goal. If you just go in to go through the motions, you're just going to go through the motions. So, I mean, that's better than not doing anything at all and getting more conditioned by being in the gym versus not. But setting something like I know that my, let's say my middle kick, I have a really hard time engaging my hips. So perhaps you spend the entire session just doing different drills to stretch out your hips, going through the repetitions to open them up, trying to stay as loose as possible. Okay, am I going up on my toe? Am I using the ball of my foot to get up there? Am I chopping the right way, etc.? Am I engaging my core properly, or is it like loosey-goosey all over the place? And again, watch yourself, watch video, study yourself, And Sean, so last question that we're going to take now. Long, another fan that pops up a lot on a lot of my social media, on Sean's social media, and he was asking Sean, what is the next video program that you're going to release?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm gonna release one anytime soon, as I'm focused on the Muay Thai Mastermind right now, and so going along with another question from Paul. Aren't you on Podbean anymore? Can't see the latest ones. I didn't get the latest one up yet because I've been busy preparing for the Muay Thai Mastermind, which just started yesterday, and my main focus is going to be on helping those people reach their goals. Because they've invested their time and money in it, and I want to make sure that I'm doing my best to give them what they deserve. And by putting my spreading myself too thin with too many other projects, which I tend to do, I'm going to try to avoid that because I already have enough projects along with the Muay Thai Mastermind. I'm running a contest for the Muay Thai retreats. Paul and I are going to be doing a Thailand camp contest, and so there's a lot of shit going on in the background that takes up a lot of my time. And I'm also trying to train and fight professionally, so it's hard to do all this. I'm not gonna lie. And so video course is not a top priority right now. And so hopefully the like I made my past video courses, especially the heavy bag blueprint and fighter's body, as thorough as I could. So this way it should be able to last you for a long time because there's so much content in it. It's a structured program and you can rinse and reuse it every single time. So right now, no video releases. The main content is going to be free. And yeah, Paul, you got anything coming out?
I'm working on editing the pad holding guide right now, but the main focus right now is the Patreon, going through what I was talking about before, just private lessons with all different types of bodies, all different experience levels, female, male fighters, amateur, professional, your grandma, your mother, your uncle, having special guest trainers. I have my heavy bag master manual on there already, which was one of my free courses, but I want to make sure that everyone can kind of communicate on there and create a bit of a community for us to, go through Q&A sessions like this together, to go over a lot of content I may not like to talk about in public. So I'd like to have people get on there that are fighters, that are looking at it from maybe the business perspective, how to promote themselves on social media, and more topics like that on top of the private sessions that I think are already more than worth the money that you get. Again, it's a pledge, so it's really up to you, whatever it's worth. But to me, I think it's worth a ton because you get the private lessons that other people are paying for. And on top of it, I'm sitting there, I'm voicing it over, I'm doing diagrams. And the reason I wanted to do it like that and really over deliver is because I know people learn in different ways. So sometimes I'm hearing people talk and I just completely kind of tune out and I need to see the perfect example. So then you also have the video, but then also diagramming it in a more like geometrical way. To me, that's how I learn. So when I see a diagram of an angle of an arrow and picturing it that way, when a teacher is showing things, that's what I'm picturing in person. Like my eyes are showing arrows and angles, and I think that's why I'm more of a technical fighter than just trying to go for like a raw knockout and put things together that way. As I'm fighting, I'm kind of doing that myself, like looking at angles and from which direction they're coming. And when I explain things, I try to make it as like anatomy based as possible. So hopefully, if you're not that type of learner, it's fine because then there's also the audio voiceover where I explain it more like from the philosophy side, what's going through my head, and then you also get the actual visual in the video. Yeah. And you can work with me at one-on-one. So
Cool.
you can email me, paul@muaythaiathlete.com, where it's actual work one-on-one. I will limit this to only 5 people because I do want it to be intimate and I want it to be a real relationship. I want it to be from people that are really dedicated for us to work and grow together. So once again, discussing the topics of whether it be business, whether it be your personal life. I mean, there's a lot that comes into this game that's not just technique and tactics within the ring. And if I can help you in any type of way when it comes to that, I've been doing this for however many years in person. And honestly, what I tell other guys. Like there's a guy at Team Quest. He's here training to become a trainer. Honestly, like he's putting in work, he's fighting, but he's telling me he's like, man, I just care about people. Like he's like, I know I'm not going to be the greatest fighter ever. I'm not going to become a legend, but I hope to one day do that for others, for them to become legends, for them to become really skilled fighters. His name's Greg, and he looks just like Greg Jackson, which is really funny. I'm like, well, you got the look in the name already. And he asked me for, my top piece of advice, and mine was that no matter who I worked with, I've had really athletic guys that I stopped training. Probably the most athletic person many people would ever meet. I kind of stopped training and I passed on just because of like the personality match. And I've had people that maybe didn't have too much athletic ability, but I saw how dedicated they were and how I can connect with them. And I think that's what I've learned the most through this whole process the past 7 years is the travels, especially going to different countries, going to different regions of the world, just seeing how people react to certain things. And it seems that the people I connect with the most is people with a fucked up past because I don't know. I don't know if it's the way my mind thinks or just the fact that I'm able to connect with people that have had some type of problem before, whether it comes to abuse or drugs, alcoholism, things like that. I understand it. Like part of my family, friends went through it, and I was able to not fall into that. But seeing it throughout my life, I feel like I can definitely connect with it and hopefully um, make a difference.
Beautiful. So wrapping up here, yeah, thank you all for shooting in your Q&As or your Qs so we can shoot you back an A. And yeah, enjoy this type of stuff. And it was really fun just being able to answer some live questions. See Agnes, she doesn't have a fucked up past, but you like working with her.
I love working with her. Some people are just good people. It doesn't mean I don't want to train good people. I'm just saying the deepest
No,
connections
fuck
are
good
with
people. I don't
yeah.
work with good people. Nah. But yeah, we'll be back at it. Sorry for the delay on getting the podcast up on iTunes, but I'll make sure to do that sometime soon. And yeah, while me and Paul are actually on some type of schedule without traveling too much yet, at least I'm not going to Thailand yet. I don't know when I'm fucking going to Thailand yet. But we'll be able to do these podcasts a little bit more often, and we'll try to do a couple times a week. So this way we catch up with some of the missed ones. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure that you check out our stuff. If you want to come train with us, we have a camp in February at Diamond Muay Thai. You can go to thailandtrainingcamp.com.
Yes.
You can also come to Costa Rica. You check out the Muay Thai Retreat Facebook because I'm running a contest giveaway for a free package. And we're also going to be doing a free giveaway for a Thailand camp sometime soon as well. So keep an eye out for that. You got anything else before we leave?
That's all. Just thank you guys for the love. Hopefully you tune in on the next podcast. Catch us on iTunes, Stitcher, and all those other platforms. MuayThaiGuide.com, MuayThaiAthlete.com. Thank you guys for watching. Love y'all. Peace out.
Peace.